Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
One of the biggest questions people are asking after a bad week 2 performance from Joe Flacco is he cooked? Now, one, we went from some of us, myself included, saying he was playing good to now people are legitimately asking if he's cooked. And I truly wonder how much of this is we forgot the whole picture of what Joe Flacco is as a quarterback. Because to me, I don't think Joe Flacco looked cooked in that game as much as he looked like, well, Joe Flacco. And sometimes Joe Flacco can play well. Sometimes Joe Flacco can play bad. One of the things that was always consistent throughout Joe Flacco's career is that he was not somebody who handled pressure well. You can go back to Joe Flacco's best seasons in his prime. You look at his under pressure numbers, they're not very exciting. He's not a very good under pressure quarterback. That's just not who Joe Flacco has been. And the idea of playing Joe Flacco whenever you game planned against him, and I think it is interesting, right, that the two teams that I have seen game plan the best against Joe Flacco are two teams that have somebody heading their defense that played either with Joe Flacco or against Joe Flacco, right? You got D'Amico Ryans in Houston, and then you have Zach Orr in Baltimore, because they are fully aware of what Joe Flacco was and what Joe Flacco wasn't, right? As we've gotten further and further away from the prime playing years of Joe Flacco, I feel like his prime has become kind of a myth, right? Where people kind of talk about it in this mythical way. I heard somebody say to me, Quincy, it makes no sense that Joe Flacco can't do these things when Aaron Rodgers is doing these things. And it made me question how many people are watching Joe Flacco right now. And the only thing they have to go off of is that Super Bowl run, his highlight tape, and what people be saying about Joe Flacco. Because I grew up watching Joe Flacco play quarterback, and the thought of why can Aaron Rodgers do something that Joe Flacco can't has never been perplexing to me. And the answer to that question, I think, is obvious. Because Joe Flacco never once in his life has ever been as good at quarterback as Aaron Rodgers has been as good at quarterback, right? Like Joe Flacco has always been somebody who you have to play a specific style for. He was a franchise quarterback, but he's not a game-changing quarterback. If you make life really hard for Joe Flacco, he's probably not going to be able to overcome it in the ways that you see a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen do or a Patrick Mahomes, because he was never even in the same class or caliber as that guy. So when you see the Ravens give a really good defensive effort, do a really good job funneling stuff to the short, to the check downs, and taking away all the intermediate chunk stuff that he kind of relies on and getting constant pressure in his face, well, this is what Joe Flacco looks like when the defense is able to achieve those things, right? Like, to me, I didn't look at Joe Flacco and say, oh, he looks old, that's why he's not playing well. This is just what Joe Flacco always looks like when he runs into these sets of challenges, because Joe Flacco has always had limitations at the quarterback position. It's interesting that people kind of forget that. Again, like Aaron Rodgers, this would be more of a conversation because Aaron Rodgers used to look like he had no limits at the quarterback position in his prime. Joe Flacco has always felt like he has had limits in his prime, right? He had the one playoff run where he played out of his mind, but other than that, he's always had limitations at the position and a hard time replicating the excellence that he did, that he demonstrated when he won that Super Bowl. Right, it's always been a narrative about Joe. Somewhere along the line, that narrative kind of changed, and people kind of talk about him in a way that is still very strange to me because it's not how people regarded Joe Flacco at the time. So maybe I have a different perspective on this because, again, I'm fully aware of what Joe Flacco was and wasn't in his prime. Right, when I was a kid watching the Browns, you feared Big Ben. You were terrified of playing Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Drew Brees. Joe Flacco comes on your schedule. It was a lot like when, Andy Dalton came to your schedule. And that's no disrespect to Joe Flacco. He's aged much better than Andy Dalton over the last few years. But Joe has always had his limitations. And I think sometimes when a quarterback plays bad, we're quick to say it's because he's old, or a quarterback like Joe Flacco plays bad, we're quick to say it's because he's old. I think it's just because Joe Flacco is Joe Flacco. Now, that being said, a lot of people asking me, if he's cooked, should we just move on? What are we going to do with Joe Flacco? One, I don't think the Browns are even remotely even thinking about benching Joe Flacco, unless what they're seeing from Dillon Gabriel behind the scenes is so impressive that they can't deny it anymore. They're probably going to start Joe Flacco for the foreseeable future, right? Again, if they're seeing something incredible in practice and they're feeling like, that they can play Dillon Gabriel and he's going to be Brock Purdy plus, okay, whatever. Go ahead, do that. I don't care, right? I'm not really married to the ideal of Joe Flacco playing a lot of games. I don't think he's going to play a lot of games. But unless you feel that good about one of these rookies, which I don't think is the case right now, then you probably should just play Joe Flacco for the future. I got 3 reasons why the Browns aren't benching Joe Flacco. We're going to get into these things, but before we do, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor for today's video, Sleeper. Hey, real quick, I want to tell you about a little bit of a sleeper of an app called Sleeper. Has fantasy, has news feed, has picks. You can do it all on the Sleeper app. Make sure you use it. Sign up using the promo code WORSTTAKE and get to 100% match on up to $100 when you use promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, 100% match for up to $100 when you use promo code WORSTTAKE. You have a great day. Now let's continue the video. Reason number 1: these next 4 games are especially tough situations. Some of these situations are tough because of the larger context around these games. Some of these situations are tough because of the obvious, which is the teams that they're playing. But all of these situations are situations where I would not remotely feel comfortable plugging a rookie quarterback in for their first start unless I absolutely had to. Right? If Joe Flacco gets injured and you feel comfortable with Dillon Gabriel, sure. But I would not intentionally just play one of these guys just to play them, because I don't think that's setting them up for the best situation. And again, I'm not asking for perfect. There's never going to be a perfect time to drop a quarterback in there, but there certainly is a decent time to drop a quarterback in there. All right, week 3 against the Packers. I don't think it's a good idea, if you can avoid it, to throw your rookie quarterback in a game versus an elite pass rusher like Micah Parsons and a defense the way that the Packers have been playing. There's a number of reasons for this. One, you don't want your quarterback to start cementing and developing bad habits because they're getting pressured at an abnormal rate than what's going to be normal in the next few weeks. Like Micah Parsons is an alien. That is a abnormal challenge. Let Joe Flacco deal with that challenge. And I find it hard to believe that Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders especially is more equipped to avoid Micah Parsons than Joe Flacco. Now, I'm not saying that Joe Flacco is going to get out there and start juking Micah Parsons or whatever, but Joe Flacco is more equipped to identify and see trouble when it happens and get rid of the ball. Dillon Gabriel, he's not running away from Micah Parsons. He's about half the size of Micah Parsons. And he's not experienced enough yet to where you just feel comfortable about his ability to manage that. Shedeur Sanders, I mean, y'all, he struggled to get away from guys in the preseason who aren't Micah Parsons for sure. Micah Parsons would be, for a quarterback who already struggles with his pocket habits and getting sacked, playing him against Micah Parsons would be actual sabotage, right? Like that would be setting him up to fail. So wouldn't think that's a good idea, right? Just because Micah Parsons, that defensive line of the Green Bay Packers, I just find it hard to believe that the rookies would give you the best chance to win next week. Then you have the Detroit Lions. Similar reasons for the Packers. Plus, this is a road game, right? Not really a big fan of that. Not really a big fan of throwing your quarterback right into an elite defense. I'm expecting good things to happen. It would feel like you're kind of setting up the young guy to fail. Week 5 against the Vikings. Now, the Vikings aren't such a dominated defense that I don't think you can play a rookie against them. The reason I don't want to play a rookie that week is because that's the London game, right? Let your rookie get their first week on a normal domestic week, not some weird week where you're going to have to spend half of it getting your body clock adjusted and playing at 9 a.m. I don't know. Let the old man deal with that, right? Like, I'd rather just let the old man deal with that and let him play at 9 a.m. And instead of trying to throw that at your rookie. Now, admittedly, that's not the most convincing reason to keep somebody out if they have to play. It really depends on how bad Joe Flacco's looking at that point. If Joe's looking all right, then yeah, let him play that game. But if Joe's looking like god-awful, terrible, the team's about to riot because he's the quarterback, then okay, you can make a change that week. I wouldn't be 100% comfortable with it, man. Yeah, I can be okay with it eventually, right? So that wouldn't be the worst week to play him. I just think, for me, wouldn't want to play a rookie quarterback and start him on his first start the week he's going to London. I don't know. That, to me, just doesn't sound like a great idea. Maybe to you it does, and you have your reasons. I'm interested to hear those reasons. To me, I would much rather wait. Now, Pittsburgh, it might not seem like the worst idea. Pittsburgh's defense doesn't look amazing, right? They do have some veterans on there. I think a lot of like the traditional reasons are going to be there too, right? Mike Tomlin versus a rookie quarterback. He has some kind of insane record, all that stuff here. Look, my reasons have nothing to do with that. The reason I don't want to play a rookie against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh is because I know the history of those games in Pittsburgh. We coming off of a London game and we playing in Pittsburgh. That just smells like a disaster waiting to happen, right? Like the game in Pittsburgh, even when shit goes well for the Cleveland Browns, always goes terribly. Outside the playoffs, where we beat the Steelers and made big men cry in front of 40 million people, according to Nielsen records. But other than that game, the history of that regular season game in Pittsburgh always been bad, right? The year we made the playoffs and beat Pittsburgh in the playoffs, horrible game against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. We lost to Duck Hodges, I believe, that week. And Duck Hodges, I believe, got injured in that game, and we still lost that game. Frustrating week of football. 2023, I don't even remember how we lost that game against Pittsburgh, but I am confident that we not only lost that game, but lost that game in a very frustrating manner against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. I'm not a big fan of it, right? I think there are no. Was that the Deshaun Watson one where he threw the pick six at the beginning and then Nick Chubb got his knee blown out? Yeah, that was 2023. That Pittsburgh game in Pittsburgh, you could call this non-scientific all you want, but I feel like I'm going to have to do the least amount of arguing to convince most people that playing a rookie quarterback for Cleveland in the Pittsburgh game in Pittsburgh is just a bad idea. History tells you that's a bad idea. Even if the team's good, it's a bad idea. It's always a bad idea. It's always a bad idea. So I'm not a fan of it for that reason. You want to play him against the Dolphins? I think that's a great idea. You want to play him against the Patriots? I think that's a great idea. You want to play him against the Jets? Sure. Ravens at home? Whatever. It's week 11. He should be ready by then. Raiders? Cool. Like, down the line, I have no problem. But anything before week 6, not a big fan. Feels like a horrible spot to put a rookie quarterback in, and expect them to succeed. So that's reason number 1. It just does not make sense. Another thing to consider, and this is something that we considered all offseason. We talked about it all offseason, and then it happens in the regular season, and everybody gets a shocked Pikachu face. But we always expected that this offense was going to start slow and finish strong. That was the hope, right? You're playing a lot of rookies on offense. You weren't expecting this offense to come out and be gangbusters. But you thought that over time, this team and this offense especially will get better. So right now, the offense kind of looks like how you expected it. It's struggling at times. Other times, they're doing enough to win, but the special teams isn't coming through. Against the Ravens, they had a tough day. The Ravens played really good football. The Browns didn't play great offensive football, and the Ravens are much more talented on the defensive side of football than the Browns are right now. Much more talented and much more experienced. They're an elite football team. We're not an elite football team. That's sometimes going to happen to you, right? If you don't have your best effort versus a team like that. It's not really shocking. Again, it's not something I'm just going to throw a million excuses at and say, oh, it doesn't count. It counts. It's something you have to look at. It's something you have to evaluate and something you want to get better than. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, we got to burn everything down and fire everybody because they had a bad game against the Baltimore Ravens. They won't be the only team this year to have a bad offensive performance versus the Baltimore Ravens. I'm pretty sure of that. So, you just got to kind of live with where the team is, the reality of what this season is, right? I've said it for a while. I've predicted it all season. I don't think this team is going over 500 just because I don't think they're going to be able to replicate or be able to create the level of offensive consistency that they're going to need to have. They also have questions at special teams as well to be able to be a top team in the ways that they need to. It's just my opinion there. I've said this all camp. I said this all off season. We've said this as a fan base that this was going to be part of the reason they're not going to go over 500. So I'm not really shocked at what we're seeing right now with this team. And I don't think it's anything to really fire and burn things down for. I feel like people are trying to gaslight you into thinking that your expectations were much higher than what your expectations were for this first 6-week stretch. We always thought if the Browns get 2 wins out this stretch, then that's much better than we anticipated. A lot of us think they're only going to get 1 win in this 6-week stretch. So, it's been rough. It's not been what you want, but it's also not been anything that doesn't make sense given where this team is and where the teams that you have played are. So, that's just the reality of it. Number 2 reason the Browns aren't benching Joe Flacco. Benching your quarterback ain't going to fix your run game. And right now, the Browns' biggest problem on offense is they don't have a run game. They're trying to put a Band-Aid over the fact that they don't have a run game by throwing the ball 45 times a game. And our quarterbacks, collectively, none of these quarterbacks are so damn good that you can just ignore your run game, right? Like, you got to be Joe Burrow to avoid that. The Browns don't got Joe Burrow sitting on the bench. If Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel were Joe Burrow, we would be playing them right now, right? They would not be benched. They would not be doing backup duty. They'd be playing right now. So you don't got a quarterback who's so good, they're going to fix the run game just by existing, which means the quarterback is not going to fix your run game. If you bench Joe Flacco, you put Dylan Gabriel in, you still have to contend with the fact that your run game is not where you want it to be at. This is another reason why the Browns should wait to bench Joe Flacco, because you want to at least get to a comfortable place with your run game before you start switching out the quarterback so you can give them something to rely on. Right now, again, you will be throwing them against elite competition into a fire without a run game. Not a successful way to set up a quarterback, in my opinion. And benching a quarterback is not going to magically make your offensive line run block better. I don't know how anybody thinks that's going to happen, but it's not going to happen. Number 3 reason the Browns aren't going to be benching Joe Flacco. Better quarterback play or better execution at the quarterback position. It's not really the main issue. Could the quarterback execute better? Could Joe Flacco make more plays? Sure, right? If Joe Flacco weren't Joe Flacco and instead he were Justin Herbert or Lamar Jackson, the Browns would be a much more successful team. But again, like we established earlier, none of these quarterbacks that are on your bench right now are those kind of talents. That's just the reality of it, right? A lot of people think the upside of, Shador Sanders is like a Geno Smith. That's not somebody who's going to overcome all the problems on your offense, right? Like, they say what Dylan's upside is a Tua. I don't think Tua is a good comp for him, but let's say Tua is the comp, right? Again, these aren't quarterbacks that you're projecting these guys to be on the high end that are the types of quarterbacks who can just fix all your issues. And really right now, the Browns' biggest issue is they can't run the ball. Better quarterback play, it's just not the main issue right now. Could better quarterback play help? Sure. If you have a quarterback who can make more throws consistently, sure. I mean, we haven't even talked about the drops that the wide receivers have been having so far this season. Like, right now, the offense has issues, and Joe Flacco's not playing amazing. But benching him, I don't think is going to further the development of these young guys, which is the most important thing. I don't think it's going to make this team any better. And if it's not going to develop the young guys and it's not going to make this team better, then what are we doing it for? To give Twitter something else to talk about? Like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Unless like the Browns shouldn't bench Joe Flacco unless they are convinced that it's going to be better for the team and it's going to be better for the quarterbacks that they're playing. If it's not the case, if that's the case, then Joe Flacco should remain the starter. That's really what it is. I know some people want a change out there because they think seeing a different number play quarterback is going to magically fix some of the other issues that the Browns have at the position, or not even at the position on the offensive side of the ball. And look, I understand why some Browns fans think that, because Deshaun Watson was legitimately so bad that it just made it hard to even evaluate last year what else was wrong with the team. But this isn't really the case, right? We know what else is wrong with the team. We know that the run game is not being successful right now. We know that the wide receivers aren't getting the separation that you would like them to on a consistent enough basis. And we know that this offense has a lot of room for improvement right now. You can change out the quarterbacks and maybe it make things marginally better here or there, but I'm just not convinced that this is a good environment for a young quarterback to develop in, just because of the games that you would be throwing them in. It just doesn't make much sense for me. Maybe after these first 6 weeks, we can talk about benching Joe Flacco. Nobody's really opposed to benching Joe Flacco. Very few people thought he was going to play a full season for this team. We all know it's going to happen at some point. But right now, it feels counterproductive to bench him right now, in my opinion. It feels like it's going to make you a worse team on Sunday, and it's also going to help you do a worse job at developing these quarterbacks when push comes to shove. It just kind of feels like some folks want to just bench a quarterback to get the ball rolling because they want to see their guy play eventually, right? But that's not the best way to go about operating a season. So, yeah, I don't think the Browns are benching Joe Flacco anytime soon. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.